Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari. Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Mr. Pad Paramahansa, Bhagavata Ashtotar, the Sri Srimad Divine Grace, Srila Sri Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parajikacharya Ashtotar, the Sri Srimad Divine Grace, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnavindra Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktavrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Okay. Thank you. Narayanam Namaskritya Narang Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudire. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, we should offer our respectful obeisances unto Lord Narayan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author, and unto Srila Prabhupada, the translator, commentator, and our spiritual master. Nashta Prayesha Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatyuttama Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Naishtaki. By regular attendance in classes on Srimad Bhagavatam and by rendering devotional service to the pure devotee, everything that is inauspicious within the heart is destroyed almost to nil, and loving devotion to the Supreme Lord, who is glorified in transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this fourth day of March 2020 in SanDiego, reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. We are in the fourth canto, the creation of the fourth order. Chapter 22, Maharaj Pitu's meeting with the four Kumaras, text number 47. Yar idrishi bhagavato gatar atmavada ekantato nigamibhi pratipaditanaha tushyant swadabra karuna swakritena nityam ko nama tat patikaroti vinoda patram yar idrishi bhagavato gatir atmavada ekantato nigamibhi pratipaditanaha tushyant svadabra karuna swakritena nityam ko nama tat patikaroti vinoda patram yar idrishi bhagavato gatir atmavada don't speed up ekantato nigamibhi pratipaditanaha tushyant vadabra karuna swakritena nityam tushyant vadabra karuna swakritena nityam ko nama tat patikaroti vinoda patram yar idrishi bhagavato gatir atmavada ekantato nigamibhi pratipaditanaha tushyant vadabra karuna swakritena nityam ko nama tat patikaroti vinoda patram yar idrishi bhagavato gatir atmavada ekantato nigamibhi pratipaditanaha tushyant vadabra karuna swakritena nityam ko nama tat patikaroti vinoda patram. No. You want to try it? Idrishi. Yar idrishi bhagavato gatir atmavada ekantato nigamibhi pratipaditanaha tushyant vadabra karuna swakritena nityam ko nama tat patikaroti vinoda patram. Anyone else? Okay. Yai, by those. Idrishi, such kind of. Bhagavataha, of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Gatihi, progress. Atmavade, spiritual consideration. Ekantataha, in complete understanding. It's not incomplete, but it's in complete understanding. Nigamibihi, by Vedic evidences. Pratipadita, conclusively established. Naha, unto us. Tushyantu, be satisfied. Adabra, unlimited. Karunaha, mercy. Swakritena, by your own activity. Nityam, eternal. Kaha, who. Nama, no one. Tat, that. Pratikaroti, counteracts. Vina, without. Udapatram, offering of water in cupped hands. Translation. Pritha Maharaj continued speaking to the four Kumaras. How can such persons who have rendered unlimited service by explaining the path of self-realization in relation to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and whose explanations are given for our enlightenment with complete conviction and Vedic evidence, be repaid except by folded palms containing water for their satisfaction? Such persons refers to the four Kumaras. Such great personalities can be satisfied only by their own activities, which are distributed among human society out of their unlimited mercy. Purport. Great personalities of the material world are very eager to render welfare service to human society. But actually, no one can render better service than one who distributes the knowledge of spiritual realization in relation with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. All living entities are within the clutches of the illusory energy. Forgetting their real identity, they hover in material existence, transmigrating from one body to another in search of a peaceful life. Since these living entities have very little knowledge of self-realization, they are not getting any relief, although they are very anxious to attain peace of mind and some substantial happiness. Saintly persons like the Kumaras, Narada, Prahlad, Janaka, Shukadev Goswami, and Kapila Dev, as well as the followers of such authorities as the Vaishnav Acharyas and their servants, can render a valuable service to humanity by disseminating knowledge of the relationship between the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the living entity. Such knowledge is the perfect benediction for humanity. Knowledge of Krishna is such a great gift that it is impossible to repay the benefactor. Therefore, Pritha Maharaj requested the Kumaras to be satisfied by their own benevolent activities in delivering souls from the clutches of Maya. The king saw that there was no other way to satisfy them for their exalted activities. The word Vinodapatram can be divided into two words, Vina and Udapatram, or can be understood as one word, Vinodapatram, which means joker. A joker's activities simply arouse laughter, and a person who tries to repay the spiritual master or teacher of the transcendental message of Krishna becomes a laughingstock, just like a joker, because it is not possible to repay such a debt. The best friend and benefactor of all people is one who awakens humanity to its original Krishna consciousness. Om Jnana Timurandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and to all members of Sri Parampara. So every so often you come across a purport that just strikes you even more than the usual purports of Prabhupada, and this was one of them for me anyway. Maharaj Prithu is expressing his unlimited gratitude to the four Kumaras for visiting him and enlightening him and all those others who were there in the palace. They all, if you recall, when they arrived, they were just super ecstatic to see them, the four Kumaras. And there was like, I think it was something like the senses coming back to life, one of those analogies, you know. This is the sign of a great devotee, that he's always very, very happy to see exalted souls like the Kumaras or Narada Muni arrive, you know, and it's just overwhelmed with glee and gratitude. So now, after having received those wonderful instructions, he is now expressing his appreciation for them. So the first idea here is that how can one possibly adequately respond to their gift? This is the greatest gift there can possibly be, is the gift of transcendental knowledge, which can end our millions of births in this material world and open up the channel again to this unlimited bliss that's there in the spiritual world, in our real existence. Otherwise, we're in darkness. It's just like we're groping around in darkness. We think we find something, oh, this is the way to happiness and this is the way to happiness. Just like this frenzy of the political season now. It's coming to a head now. It's starting to build all the way to November. And what's going on? It's the same. It's always the same aspiration of people. That somehow, if we worship these people, and it really is worship, you give your time, you give your money, you give your adulation, you give your vote, right? And what's the expectation of the hope? Well, this person, hope and change. They hope for change. Somehow, people are suffering one way or another, or there's a threat, and it'll be mitigated, by this person who'll come in and change things. That's been going on for ages. But every time it doesn't live up to expectations. They always fail, and people become discouraged in that avenue. But they'll go to some other material avenue, some extreme sense gratification or opioids. Why is there an opioid crisis now? Why does that come upon us? Because people are trying to deaden the pain, sometimes literally, and it gets a hold of them and they can't stop it. And sometimes just because the general pain of life in this material world and the way things have worked out in America with many, many people not being able to make ends meet, it's just misery. So this is the solution. But obviously it's a perfect example of Prahlad Maharaj's teachings in his prayers. Last night we were reading from the 10th chapter of the Gita. You were here. And we read about one of the things of demons, of the descendants of Diti, they're known as the Daityas, a whole race of demons, most famous of whom are Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu. But Krishna doesn't say, I'm not one of them, I'm Prahlad. He also appeared in that Daitya family. I told the story. So Prahlad has so many wonderful teachings just in a few chapters in the 7th canto. He's teaching his father, and then in the interim there's a whole chapter of him teaching his friends. You remember that? Instructions to his classmates. That's very instructive also. And then he has his prayers to Nrsingadev, which are also full of wonderful teachings. So one of my favorites there, and I haven't quoted it for a while, so I'll feel free to quote it. He says, Yasmat priya priya viyoga sayoga janma shokagnina sakatayona shadayamana. In 2 lines there, he encapsulates material life and the trap you're in, suffering. So he says, Yasmat, from this, priya apriya viyoga sayoga, janma. Janma means birth, obviously. So born from these phenomena he just described, he's describing himself as if he were conditioned souls. I've been burning in an ocean of misery and suffering. So what are those things that happen? And you can analyze, it's true for everybody. Those things which are dear to us, beginning with your own body and your own health, say, and those who are very close to you, your children, your relatives, your parents, your wife, husband, whatever. You want to hang on to that for dear life, right? But inevitably, by the force of time, it's ripped away from you, taken away. If not, if you have a wonderful family and there's no great trauma, eventually, just by the force of time, your health is taken away, and eventually your whole body is taken away. So the thing that's most dear to you is ripped away. And that's priya viyoga. Then there's apriya, the things which you don't want to come at you. They're sayoga, they're forced upon you. You're forced to unite with them. That's what yoga means here. So from that comes yasmat priya priya viyoga sayoga janma shokagnina, fire of lamentation, right? Just the threat of them coming causes so much anxiety. That's why there's this huge $1 trillion health insurance industry. People are afraid, I'm going to get sick, and what's going to happen? All right, I'll get some health insurance. Of course, it never quite, especially these days, never quite meets up with your expectations. And then trying to pay the premiums, that's another anxiety. The whole thing is just one after another. So, shokagnina, and it's not just this one life. It was just one life we can tolerate, but sakala yoni shuddhayamana. I'm burning in this fire of anxiety in all kinds of species. The human species is the most suffering because you have your wonderful intelligence where you can project and fear all these things that are, haven't even manifested yet. But in every species, it's the same idea. Some cat's walking around and he's looking for food, So he's separated from the food. That's causing some suffering. If he gets it, oh, wonderful, he got something. But then it's taken away, or it's threatened to be taken. So the thing that's dear, he's looking for, and then if he gets it, it's taken away. Every species is in the same suffering mood. Now, of course, there are points there of happiness and joy, which cover our remembrance. At this moment, at least, I'm not in the agony of the fire of anxiety. I finally, I think. But that's just fool's gold, because you just wait a few moments or hours or days, and then something else will come at you, right? This is material life. So Krishna says, dukkhaliyam, ashashvatam. This world is full of misery, and it's temporary on top of everything. So now, in the human form of life especially, we have an opportunity to create some remedy for the miseries, counteraction. It's called a duk aushadhi. Aushadhi literally means remedy, often a herbal remedy, medicine. So we employ these medicines, duk aushadham. But then he says, tadapi dukkam. The remedy themselves cause more misery. And I always think of the wonderful pharmaceutical industry, which is always coming up with these new, extremely expensive medicines. Just buying them is itself a misery, because you have to go into debt, So, but then if you get it, then you take it, and then there's some side effect. And especially now, I was reading this one article about, older people, they have so many new medicines coming, So you go to one doctor and they give you this, and that. And then you're taking all these different high-powered pharmaceuticals. Well, there's all these interactions they may not even know about. And suddenly you've got new diseases you didn't have before, caused by the pharmaceuticals themselves that were going to cure the first disease. So that's what he says, dukkha tadapi dukkam. The remedy for the misery causes more misery. Just think of the automobile industry. It's about a little more than 100 years old now. I think the first Model T Ford started coming out in the early 20th century. And, this is a wonderful invention, I heard this thing, I don't know if it's true or not, that one of the problems, as the cities were growing, like Chicago or something, well, you had horse and buggy to get around, like we've seen all those old movies. But the horses are passing stool in the street all the time. You can imagine like a big traffic jam of carriages, what a mess it is, So suddenly you have this horseless carriage, moving along very nicely and even faster. Oh, what a relief. So they build more roads and get all the, So now, some years later, you've got the traffic jams, you've got the accidents, you've got the global warming, right? You've got the predatory fossil fuel industry. It's insane. So that's the dukkam that comes from the dukkha aushadhi. And it's always that way in material life. So now three lines he's described. No, and then the key phrase, the cause of it all is atadiyaham, that I'm thinking I'm something I'm not. It's all based on this false bodily concept of life. That's the root of all of our suffering in this world and having a material body. So what's the remedy? Exactly pertinent to this. Bhuman, he says, oh, great Lord. He's speaking directly to Nrsingadev. His little Prahlad, 5 years old, and his huge incarnation of Nrsingadev, who's just this, killed his father. His body's lying over there, there's blood everywhere. But Prahlad is focused on Nrsingadev. Bhuman, oh great Lord, Brahmami vadame tavadasya yogam. Please instruct this wandering soul, going into all the different species and planets, in your dasya yoga, your bhakti yoga. In other words, knowledge of bhakti yoga received from the great source. What could be a greater source than Nrsingadev himself or Krishna himself in Bhagavad Gita? Is the real remedy for all of our suffering. And you can never repay those who have given you that knowledge. And that's why, Prabhupada, he came basically, with two basic gifts, right? The holy name and all the knowledge that coming from the Shastra that he had realized and that he had studied and he was able to give. Even though his English wasn't perfect, still he knew the message was so important that he couldn't hesitate. He wrote the books, his Bhagavatam books, and then he was speaking. And he was, and as you listen, I love to listen to these old tapes, like 1966 in New York. There's some really, nice recordings. And Prabhupada still has some of that Indian cadence that you hear, the certain melodic thing. He gradually lost that because he wasn't in India so much. But and Indianisms, instead of we say when you're speaking, you can't think what to say. There's this thing where he says, "I mean to say," as you're gathering your thoughts. I mean to say this. That's the way. You don't hear that. So, but somehow or other, after a year almost of trying to find an audience, he found that audience in 26 Second Avenue, and it's just flowing, and there's no, and the whole idea is that they may have understood 80% of it, 90% of it, but Prabhupada, his conviction and his realization was so powerful that he was able, with so many classes and things, to impart the faith in the knowledge. Faith. All of this is, it's beyond the ken of our material senses. God is actually this wonderful blue boy with a flute and a peacock feather. I mean, to really believe that and start chanting Hare Krishna, it requires someone who is glowing with faith and realization, who can impart that faith in you. And that was, Prabhupada's one of his greatest gifts. So then, of course, now we're reading the 4th canto. And, I happened to be there. I was very fortunate because I never got past, the kind of the barrier when you're distributing books and trying to beat down the false ego in the mind so you can keep. And I will confess to you, I would go out on books, we go into the subway every Saturday. It was a daily thing. And then after a few hours, I would go to the library, the big library in Midtown Manhattan, and I would just read there, this is Prabhupada's books, because I couldn't face the beating on my ego. But I was so happy to find out I could participate in this book, this distributing of the knowledge by book production, which was, Prabhupada very much wanted that. And so I've been doing that for the last 47 years. But I just have the highest regard for, book distributors who have, determinedly go out and week after week, month after month, year after year. And they're really on the front lines, and they get such a tremendous amount of mercy. And it's exactly pertinent to this whole mood here. We can never repay Prabhupada and other, teachers who've come after him and before him for the gift that we're receiving. And the best way to try to repay, he said something you would try to repay, is by learning it. I got my little mantra here. Everyone can have it. Learn it, live it, give it. That's like the whole program right there. Right? We got a T-shirt coming in that? Because it's kind of an internal T-shirt. Okay. Yeah. Good. Thank you. That's one that I could wear, maybe during class. Anyway, so the whole thing is there. That learn it, live it, give it is really the characteristics or qualifications of the acharya. An acharya is defined as a devotee who is saturated and steeped in the Shastra, knows it backwards and forwards, and lives according to the Shastra, and takes the trouble to preach and give it out. That's the acharya. And this whole line is filled with acharyas. That's that Bhakti, Srila Prabhupada, of course, and Bhakti Siddhanta, and our modern gurus who are sincerely trying to preach. That their qualification is exactly this: that they know the philosophy well, they're able to impart it, they take the trouble to impart it, and they live by the injunctions. So then, such great person that can be satisfied only by their own activities. Now, this reminds me. Those of you who are familiar with, the 10th canto and the rasa dance, Krishna's praising the gopis, and he's telling them, I cannot repay you for your love, all that you've given me. So I ask you to please be satisfied with your own activities. In other words, the pleasure that you're getting from, whatever pleasure you're getting from serving me, that's your recompense. And on the devotee side, it says, oh, that's plenty. I don't want anything else. That's the sign of a pure devotee, is that they're completely satisfied just serving Krishna. If they know that Krishna is pleased because the Guru is pleased, it's a bona fide service and everything, then that's it. That's all they want. And that pleasure is the highest pleasure. That is what's going on in the spiritual world. Krishna is very anxious to arrange for ways in which the devotees can serve him as they want to serve him. And he reciprocates in such a way that they are completely satisfied, ecstatic in that service. And you can see there's not a drop of lust there. There's no personal desire. Krishna is delighted to make arrangements to facilitate his devotee service of him, knowing that will give them the greatest pleasure, you see? But he's not, selfishly trying to take anything himself. He's also giving. Otherwise, why would he take the trouble to come to this world, right? Which he doesn't need to come. He's perfectly satisfied in the spiritual world. And he's still there. It's not like when he's on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, he's not also in Goloka, he's also there. But it's a trouble. Come down here, and then you got all these demons are attacking, and evam parampara praptam, that the science as it is, Bhagavad Gita, Bhakti Yoga, has been lost due to the force of time. So now I'm coming and I'm reinstituting it with you, O Arjuna. So he's doing it out of compassion, out of mercy. And he's showing that this is actually the highest mercy one can give, is to take the trouble to try to find those souls who can respond to the message and receive it, and themselves become beacons of light in this dark world. That's the whole mood of this movement, and that was Lord Chaitanya's mission. And he himself, took the trouble, even though, of preaching directly. 2 years after taking sannyas, he traveled all over South India. And his method of preaching was very simple. He would chant Hare Krishna. And people would see him and they would become ecstatic. And then they would go home to their villages and they were like, full of prema, and people would come in touch with them. And then it was almost like the coronavirus, but on a positive thing. They would catch the prema. But anyway, this is the welfare service. Now, great personalities of material are very eager to render welfare service to human society. They're rare. Most of the powerful persons in this world, this Kali Yuga, are pretty demoniac. They're all figuring out how they can manipulate people's consciousness in order to get more power, more money, more adulation for themselves. They're very well represented in the Bhagavatam by a whole slew of demons. That's the demonic quality. Read the 16th chapter. How much money have I made today? How much can I make tomorrow? I've killed this enemy. I'm going to kill that enemy. But I want to look religious, so I'll perform some sacrifices. I'll go to church, and people will think I'm worshiping God. We see it all over. So, but they're not great personalities. The really great personalities are very eager to render welfare service. Now, there are people who are not in that mood, and they do material welfare, which is good. Good, not great, but good. In the Bhagavad Gita, 12th chapter, Krishna's, that chapter is entitled, who can remember? Hello. What is it? Bhakti Yoga. It's just Bhakti Yoga. It's only 20 verses, but it's like a culmination of those middle 6 chapters is the 12th chapter. Prabhupada said the middle 6 are the essence of the Gita. So, Krishna's, he's asked a direct question by Arjuna, well, which is the best? Which is better? You tell me now for sure. Those who worship you directly in Bhakti Yoga, or those who are more attracted and worship you through the impersonal absolute, So Krishna says, there's no doubt about it. Worship me directly is the best. Maya, but you just fix your mind upon me, worship Maya Veshamano, Yemam Nitya Yukta Upasate, Shraddhaya Parayopetas Tame Yukta Tamamata. I think that's in the 12th chapter. Just fix your mind on me and render devotional service with great faith, and you'll come to me, there's no doubt. That's the best. But those who are fixed their mind on the absolute, they're attracted to that, eventually they come to me also, if they do welfare work for people in general. In other words, if it's all simply self-centered, then they're not really making progress. They'll have to come back down again. But they don't know what real welfare work is. That's the problem. But in that chapter, Krishna, it's like very wide. He's setting a very wide scale, or making the door to bhakti as wide as it can be. It says, okay, if you can't fix your mind on me, then practice the principles of Bhakti Yoga, like we do, Vaidhi Bhakti. And eventually, and it's very interesting what he says, eventually you'll get the desire to attain me. It's all a question of purifying your desire, you see. Okay. If you can't, you don't have time, you're too busy work and everything, to seriously practice sadhana bhakti, then just try to work for me. In other words, give some of your hard-earned money, or you have some time, do some practical service, in that way. And then eventually you come to the point of more serious regulated bhakti. Okay. And if you can't even do that, don't take her out of the class. She can't do anything now. Oh, you have to go. You have to leave anyway. Okay. Anyway, I'm just, because they like to. She'll do anything. So you go down. Yeah. Can you just make something? Hare Krishna. So anyway, where was I? So he's going down. He's saying, okay, you can't work for me. At least give up be a charitable person. Do mundane charity. But whatever you do, don't become completely absorbed and attached to and greedy for the fruits of your work. The whole idea is to at least start chipping away at that false ego, which is so much centered on what's me, what's mine, I'm this body, what's mine. This is demoniac root. And we're all susceptible to it by the modes of nature. So he's encouraging, And after that point, he says, but better than the charitable person is, and ultimately is the best is the yogi. And then he starts saying what the actual qualifications of the pure devotee is. Advaishta, Savabhutanam, free of envy, and so many things. Last 4 or 5 verses in the chapter, or 6 or 7. So, but he does say, there that try to be charitable. Don't build up that false ego with all of this false possessions and everything. Try to give help to others. I'll tell you a story. I think it was Sariputta who told us this. I hope it's not apocryphal. But he was a high-powered, mathematics professor. Not a professor yet, but he had a degree, PhD, or almost had it, in northern New York, upstate New York, which I grew up in New York. And, he described that. And this is, mathematicians can be a little crazy when they, really get advanced, because they see everything in terms of those equations and everything. So he said he would see a tree, but he wouldn't just see a tree. He would see all the equations and the interactions of the molecules and everything on it. So he was seeing through that. But then there was a flood. There was a flood up there. I forget what river, And as it often is a case, when these disasters happen, it brings out the best in people. Because everyone has to work together to try to, get the sandbags or whatever it is, So he was drawn into that. And he'd got drawn out of himself, as it were, and he did that, And that kind of opened up a little bit, softened his heart. And he got curious about things. He went into the bookstore and he found Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita, And he began to read it, he got more intrigued, came down to Brooklyn where we had our center. I remember him coming there. And eventually he became Bhakta Richard. Now, how do you engage someone who has a PhD in physics and high mathematics? Well, we need somebody to do the add the columns up in so he's doing a little arithmetic, that was his first engagement. But the point is that by being generous, even materially, it softens the heart enough so that a devotee may come and say, would you like to give a little donation? Anyway, this is the idea. So those devotees who are taking the trouble, risking their lives especially to preach this message are the most dear to Krishna. There's no question about it. He said so in the Gita. So why are people suffering? They forget their real identity. They hover in material existence. These people they have very little or no knowledge of self-realization and don't get any release. They're looking for a place of peace and happiness. Every living entity, somehow, But you can't find it. Not for any length of time, People, the rich, they have their big gated communities. Even here, you'll have, it's a gated community, it's guarded, no homeless can wander in there, it's peaceful, But how peaceful can it really be? There's still the threats, the coronavirus, world war, global warming. You can't be peaceful in this world. There's no way. But that's always the goal. They're anxious to obtain peace of mind and some substantial happiness. Then he mentions, I think he's referring to the Mahajans here. He names 6 or 7 of them, the Kumaras who are featured here, Narada Muni, Prahlad Maharaj, who we were discussing last night, Janaka, the father of Sita, who doesn't appear, the only one who doesn't appear in the Bhagavatam and actually give instructions in the Bhagavatam. But he also is a great exemplar and Mahajan. Shukadev Goswami, Kapila Dev. Well, he doesn't mention here Yamaraj. But they're the acharyas, and they're the ones who are the embodiment in this world of this knowledge that we need. And you'll notice they appear one after another in the Bhagavatam, and we get the lessons of the Kumaras as we just did. Narada is in every canto. Prahlada, I just mentioned, has such a wonderful section in the 7th chapter. Shukadev throughout, Kapila Dev, 3rd canto. So these, I remember reading the Bhagavad first canto for the first time, and Prabhupada has this at the end of one purport. When Narada Muni is featured a lot. He's teaching Vyasadeva, and his instructions are essential. And at the end of one wonderful purport, Prabhupada says, and we really should thank Narada Muni for appearing here in the pages of the Bhagavatam, because these personalities are as absolute as Krishna, meaning that we can get their association by studying their words and studying their activities. And that's what we see in the Bhagavatam. So that's like, what could be more valuable? I mean, we can actually hear Narada Muni. We can hear Krishna speaking in the Gita, in the 11th canto, in the Uddhava Gita. And if we appreciated that, then we'll be hanging on every word. We'll really, and that's this shushu shol that keeps coming up. Ardent hearing. And so much, of course, we have books now and ardent reading, really taking it in, sharing it with others, vibrating, repeating. So that's the best way to associate with these great souls and appreciate their gift, which is the knowledge. That's what Prabhupada is talking about. Knowledge of Krishna is such a great gift, it's impossible to repay the benefactor. But, so this came up during Prabhupada's time. Well, how can we repay you? And of course he would say, you can't, but still you can try. And the best way to try is by learn it, live it, give it. Study. He wanted us to study these books. He established these different degrees, Bhakti Shastri, Bhakti Vaibhava, Bhakti Vedanta, different quantities of his books to become expert in. And that's going on. As you know, you can do that online, actually. But then having studied it, you want to teach it also. It really becomes alive when you take the trouble to teach it and give it. And of course, live it at the same time. So this, at the end here, they decided this joker. This is the Vinoda Patram. In other words, Prabhupada liked this word ludicrous. Ludicrous makes you laugh, It's ludicrous to think that you could repay someone who gives you the gift that is going to end all your misery and immerse you in an ocean of unlimited and ever-increasing ananda. What could be, what could you possibly give back to that? All you can do is offer the pranams, with a little water, In other words, one should appreciate and try to give it to others, And that giving it to others, as Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati himself told Prabhupada when he encouraged him to preach, that will do good to others and to you also. And anyone who gets into that, preaching mode is feeling that's the sustenance for the sannyasis. Those who are free of every attachment and just travel and preach, they stay focused on giving the nectar and you're always in the taste of planning your next program and what are you going to say. Of course, the kirtan is there, So that's how you stay enlivened. Otherwise, the Mayavadi sannyasis don't have that, They may also walk around, in the same color. They have different kind of tilak. I was in Vrindavan one time, and the Mayavadis like to come there because that's where the action is, That's where the real. But I saw 3 of them walking down the road, They didn't look very blissful, and they just looked a little bit angry. And I said, you can see they're not Vaishnavas, They're not relishing because they don't believe. They don't believe all that, the Krishna walked there and this is Krishna's place and they don't have a relation with Krishna. So that's another reason, we've been saved from the devouring. What is that? There's a verse like that. Oh, yes. You know this, Ramapati. In the song to the 6 Goswamis. Kaivalyam, that the Goswamis have saved us from the devouring, Mayavad philosophy. I forget what the Sanskrit is. Okay, so any comments? Oh, let me read this wonderful translation again. Prahlad Maharaj continued, how can such persons who have rendered unlimited service by explaining the path of self-realization in relation to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and whose explanations are given for our enlightenment with complete conviction and Vedic evidence, be repaid except by folded palms containing water for their satisfaction? Such great personalities can be satisfied only by their own activities, which are distributed amongst human society for their unlimited mercy. Of course, what he doesn't say is that the only way to try to repay them is by learn it, live it, give it. Any questions? Yes, Prabhu. Okay.
So what if someone was, because sometimes this is brought up, someone would say, okay, well, I'm inadequate, I haven't learned it that much, I'm having a hard time living it. I mean, of course I'm trying, but I'm imperfect in many ways. And what to speak of my learning, and it's also imperfect, so how can I give it? I don't feel that I'm qualified to do that.
Yeah.
So how can I?
Well, that's part of the mercy of book distribution, isn't it? That even if you're, you may not be following 100%, and you may have so many defects and whatever, but somehow or other, you could sit behind a book table and just smile at people and offer them books so you can, try to engage, whatever, somehow or other distribute books. You're giving the perfect knowledge. And so that act alone will give you more spiritual strength to actually follow more strictly and more inspiration. So that's another gift of Prabhupada. Because in the old days you didn't have that. No books. It's all speaking. But now we have this, these wonderful compendiums Prabhupada gave. That's the one answer.
Yeah, sometimes so it's okay, well, I could do that, but what about when I go on books and then someone asks me a difficult question? I don't know the question, so what am I supposed to do? And that's in that situation, because I'm not so learned, what if they ask me some difficult question, what am I supposed to do? What would you say to that?
I don't have any direct experiences. What did you do when you first went out and didn't know it?
Yeah, I have an answer to that. One thing is that most of the times people don't ask difficult questions.
Yeah.
Like I talk to hundreds of people all throughout the years.
And they ask you, they ask you, what's that funny thing on your face?
What's on your face? Students come here all the time. They ask, oh, what's that on your face? Or what's the meaning of your haircut and your clothes? Yeah. It's all very external.
Bodily, yeah, right.
So most of the time they don't ask difficult questions. That's my experience. And if they do ask questions, they're actually not that difficult.
Yeah, right.
They're like basic philosophical questions that I think even somebody who, isn't like, super learned could answer. Yeah. But sometimes
how do you feel about Jesus Christ? I mean, that's probably something.
Yeah. Sometimes you do run into people who ask a little bit more challenging questions, and then, like, for example, like scientific questions, I'd say, you know what, I'm not a scientist, but we have people at the temple you could come by, because sometimes you do a disservice, actually. Try to answer somebody's scientific question, and you don't really know what you're talking about. So, well, we have so many books, Sadhuputa's book, this book, that book. We got a scientist coming next month, Jutta Karma. You could come and see him, I'll give you his email, whatever. I'll give you the website to his books. Yeah. Things to kind of get around.
Maybe it's good that we carry around a few of those Origins magazines. Those are pretty impressive,
Yeah.
You can always take one of those.
But generally, I wouldn't say that's a big scare-off, somebody's going to ask some difficult question. I don't think that's valid, really.
Okay. Thanks for the question. Thanks for the answer. Anyone else? Okay. I know you have to go, so I'll end with a really quick sweet. Isn't there something, Samarpiyat, Madhuram Samarpiyat? You should end with something sweet. You don't know about that. Madhuram, Madhuram, Vabadasya Vibho, Madhuram, Madhuram, Vadanam, Madhuram, and Madhugandhi Madhusmita Medadaho, Madhuram, 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 Madhuram. Easy to memorize that one. Sweet, sweet is my dear Lord's form. Sweeter still his face so fair. But his honey-scented, gentle smile is sweet beyond compare. Krishna Karnamrita. Krishna Karnamrita is some things that are a little too intimate, but that's not one of them. You can all learn that verse. In fact, it's quoted 2 or 3 times in the CC. So anyone who wants that verse, you can get it from me. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Anyway.